So in the last video, we discussed what I termed the author funnel, the different points in the writing process that eliminate the number of authors from 82% of people who want to write a book to 1/100th of 1% of the population who manage to actually um, get a book published, especially multiple books. While in the last video we identified all the problem points, in this video I'm going to lay out some of my tactics for defeating each stage of the funnel. I have written a lot of books. I have published a lot of books. In order to do so, I had to come up with some techniques. So here they are. So one thing I think that it's important to recognize that can apply to nearly every stage of the funnel is that while life circumstances certainly cause a number of writers to quit, that for the rest, it's often ego. It's the ego that is oversized and gets stuck in the funnel and doesn't let you down to the next level. By ego, I don't mean it in the most negative sense. I mean it in like the sense of self, in the worry of other people's perceptions, in the necessity that the world recognizes your efforts in some way. It's all understandable, but it's sad if that makes you quit when you are getting better every time you sit down to write. Okay, so let's look at the first stage of the funnel, and that is desire. If you don't want to write, and for some reason you're watching this video, I'm not going to try to convince you. I think that pretty much everyone here wants to write a novel. Or why would you be sitting here looking at me in my low production quality video spout off at you? So let's go ahead to the next stage, and that is ideas. If you have an abundance of ideas, good for you. I don't hate you at all. But even if you do have a lot of ideas, having the ability to create more at will still might be useful to you at some point. So my primary tool is the story engine. There are different configurations that you can draw these cards in, but basically you select a random card with 4 agents, which represents your protagonist, a random card with 2 motivations that the protagonist could have, a random card with 4 objects of that motivation, and a random card with 2 complications. And then you just twist and turn them around until you come up with something that is a viable plot concept. That last part, the part with the complications, is what I think really sets this system apart from most prompt creation systems. It really is the full seed of a plot that you need to be able to grow a plot from. I have tried a lot of systems, and for me, a modified version of this one works the best. You can draw another agent card to try to figure out the antagonist if it's not very well suggested by the original pull of the cards. You can draw extra cards that have adjectives if you don't have quite enough of an idea and start applying those. My second most used tool after the story engine are Rory's story cubes. I will get a good idea going with the story engine, and then I'll grab a handful of these image dice and roll them and just try to see where I can fit the images in. It sounds kind of silly, but it's like shocking how often it'll take a plot idea that I'm like, yeah, okay, that's pretty good, and it will add the compelling factor that makes me really excited to write about it. So I'll usually make 3 of these in a sitting. And then after I have 3 of them, which takes maybe an hour a piece, I will choose the best of them. And that'll be the idea I go with. I will post a video of myself using these tools at some point soon so that you can see them in action. I am not an affiliate of either of these things. I just feel like they work really well. So then I will take that plot concept and I will plug it into some sort of framework and flesh it out. That process takes a day or two for say screenplays because it's pretty much required. I will fit it into the like 13 beats of the Save the Cat structure. For novels, I may do that, or I might go with something else. Okay, so the next stage of the funnel is getting started. There are so many things that keep a person from actually getting started. It is so psychologically deep that there are multiple books written about this topic. Honestly, I would suggest that if you really have a problem with this, that you consider reading one of those, just a general getting started book. I don't know if there are any books specifically about how to get started writing your own book or not. I don't have the best processes here because this is not an issue that I have, but I can offer a little bit of advice. I would say don't consider researching your book actually the same thing as starting your book. Don't think that you have started your book until you've started putting the words of the book onto a page. People will research to avoid the discomfort of doing the thing. This doesn't just apply to writing, this applies to everything that's intimidating. I would say set a time limit on how long you're going to research and then start writing. And if you need to, continue researching like during the writing process after you've already gotten your words out or when some bit of information stops you. You need enough general background knowledge to create the ideas, and then a lot of the little nitty gritty details will come up, like you can look for those at the time. So another thing that can prevent a person from starting is the size of a novel. If it is too big and intimidating, plot ahead and break it into bite-sized chunks of scenes. Then write a scene and save it and close your word processor. And then the next time you sit down to write another scene, and then another, and another. And before long, you will have a completed book. If, on the other hand, it's figuring out exactly what happens in every scene that intimidates you when you don't know your characters yet, just write Act 1. Don't think ahead. You don't have to know where a book is going to be able to write Act 1. You might have to then double back on the rewrite and drop in some little hooks, introduce some characters that you turn out to be important that you feel should be introduced earlier. But on the whole, Act 1 is covered by your plot concept. And the writing for that will generally flow as long as you know your protagonist, what they want, and the complication that's going to prevent them from getting it. That's exactly what I described that the story engine will get you. It's, that's a plot concept. Once you have that down, you can decide if you are going to keep writing spontaneously or if you need some more structure. I have found that my second act always comes up very short if I don't plot things out. And I just think in a very straightforward manner. And to add all sorts of complications of trial and error, as Save the Cat puts it, fun and games up to the midpoint, and then bad guy closes in after the midpoint. In order to be able to do that, I really need to plan. I have written Act 1 without having plotted many times, and I've written several books without having plotted very far ahead. But it is a lot easier for me to write Act 2 if I've plotted. If you are intimidated because writing seems too strenuous, give yourself a word count target of 100 words. And then at the end, when you hit it, keep going if you want to. But once you've gotten to it, like quit without guilt. Like feel good about what you've accomplished. I think that probably once you get to 100 words, you're going to want to continue on. But even if you don't feel guilty about it. Carrying your work forward by another 100 words is a real accomplishment. If you are having a hard time starting because you don't think you're going to write well enough, you're probably not going to. This is usually the worry of someone who hasn't already written a few books. you are probably going to take your first book and set it aside. Like anything else, writing a novel takes practice. And then beyond that, even the most experienced novelists, almost to a one, write a first draft that's not publishable. There are a few whose first drafts are very similar to their final drafts, but that doesn't mean that's not like something that you should particularly be aiming for. What matters is the final result. You get that rough draft down, and it becomes the clay that you mold. It takes the stress off of you because actually getting the whole manuscript there seems up in the air. Once you have it, it's concrete. It is a thing, and you can manipulate it. So make writing that first draft, make making that base material as easy as possible. Don't stress out about it. I know that's easy to say, but I'm saying recognize that it doesn't have to be good. It is a lot less stressful to shape what you have. Now, some people find it very boring, and some people find it fun. I happen to actually find revision pretty fun up to a certain point. Act two. I already kind of touched on this in the previous, because some of what applied to getting started also applies to getting past Act two. I also made a video about the boring middle, and I suggest checking it out if you have a bunch of manuscripts that end with the end of Act one on your computer. But in that video, I came at it from the viewpoint of a person who naturally doesn't plot and had to eventually admit that I needed to. So that is my perspective, but it doesn't reflect everybody's. And I thank those of you in the comments who pointed out perspectives that I didn't take. I try to be generic and I try to think of multiple things from multiple angles, but like sometimes you just don't recognize when something is just that way for you. And I really appreciate it when you point out in the comments that you have an alternate strategy for something, that you experience something differently, because you're certainly not the only one. So I would say go check out that video about the boring middle killing books dead. But let's look at this from multiple angles that didn't get covered in the video. If you get to Act two and just everything goes limp, and you can't figure out how to drive the plot forward, the story forward, try plotting every scene. At this point, you know your characters, hopefully, and if you are really getting into it in your imagination, you should be able to get them to act realistically with who they are as characters and not write something that seems forced. That's the good part about like doing this in a hybrid style as opposed to plotting it from the very beginning. Although now I actually do plot things from the very beginning. Character is kind of always foremost in my mind, but I've written plenty of books where I didn't start really plotting until Act two, and that can be a great hybrid method. Plotting after this point keeps you from stressing out over a lack of inspiration at any given moment and turns writing from moments of genius into just work that you can push through. You take the next step, the next step, the next step. But let's say that you get to Act two and you are bored to death of following your carefully crafted outline. Your characters are fighting you. If a character is speaking to you loudly, my thought is that they're probably going to lead you someplace compelling. If you are a natural plotter, but it is stopping you from getting through Act two, let your characters run wild. Act two it's not padding. Like, you need to see the protagonist go through their journey, but there is a lot of wiggle room in it. Give yourself that slack. And if you ever get to the point where you're like, okay, what next? You can start plotting from that point. There's no need to plot from the beginning, so don't stress about it. One very interesting strategy that I had never thought of, that a commenter left on that video about the boring middle, said that they write the first draft more as a draft zero. My understanding is that it's something like a cross between a first draft and an outline. So very loose, very rough. It has text in it that will probably be carried forward, unlike an outline, but it doesn't, it has gaps and is rough. And then when they start their true first draft, it has some structure to it, but has a lot of slack that allow the characters to act true to their nature, ring authentic, and leaves a lot of room for the author to do interesting improvisation. I love this idea. I sometimes get very into the outlining and then will stop myself. And I'm thinking that I might let myself run wild with it and almost create this draft zero for a book in the future. So those are some techniques for getting through Act 2. How about completing the book? If you are having trouble wrapping up a book, tying up all of your threads, just go Hamlet and kill everyone off. That's what I do. Okay, but let's say that you don't write horror. um, in the choices between a satisfying conclusion and wrapping up every thread, choose a satisfying conclusion every single time. That will give your book the shape that you need to complete the draft. And then you can go back and weave in the threads that are worth finishing and pluck out others that seem to not fit well. If you ended up with something really complex, you might have to get visual with this. You might need to do some sort of graph with all your threads along one side and a timeline along the bottom. Try to visualize the balance of the story and which threads you still have hanging. Once things aren't amorphous, the thing about a novel is it's so big that it's like impossible to hold in your head all at once. So if you're having problems with the amorphous nature, like running up against the need for concrete conclusions, draw it out, make it no longer like turn it from amorphous to concrete. And my bet is that you'll be able to move forward. The unknown creates a huge amount of drag. Okay, so next step in the funnel that takes out 98 or 99% of people who want to write a book or who want to see a book through is publishing. The entire industry now is reshaping itself around self-publishing. If you want a contract, the best way to get it is to make a splash self-publishing. If you want to make the most money possible off of your old books that were previously published by a publisher while the publisher is publishing, publish your next book, and they're not actively promoting your back catalog, the best thing to do is when your rights revert back to you, self-publish them. I think that almost everybody should be what they call a hybrid author at this point, because there is no better marketing and promotion than what a publisher can do for you, but there is no better way to get the attention of that publisher and to keep the most of your money than by self-publishing. So you might mourn what the lack of gatekeepers has done to literature. Sure, but that's not you, right? You're only going to publish something that's worth publishing, right? So you won't be adding to the problem. Another worry that you have is that if you self-publish this novel, a publisher won't buy it. They might, and they might not. I received a contract for a book that had been self-published for a decade. Then again, it's true that there are a lot of publishers who feel like if you have already sold a lot of copies and saturated the market, that they're not going to get a return on their investment, and they don't, and they want your next book. You're going to write another book. Writing the first wasn't magic. It was hard work, and due to that hard work, your second book is going to be even better. The publisher will be even more eager to publish it. Now, if it's the complexity and cost of self-publishing, I'm going to do a series of videos on that. This is not what I'm interested in talking about. So, like the practicalities of self-publishing, the step-by-step process, but putting out a bad product or putting out a good one that you dropped huge amounts of cash on that you can't recoup, are going to kill your writing career dead. And I don't want to see that happen to you. So I'm going to show you how to make a high quality book very affordably by putting in a lot of the work yourself, and I will give it to you step by step and in such a way that I don't believe that you need to be very tech savvy at all. The thing is that even most experienced people make their ebooks poorly. They'll have you do things like print an EPUB file from the Word document. So I think that this is something that there is room for, and I think it's something that would do some good. Tell me if you are interested in, I've calculated it out and I think it'd end up being like probably a 7 video series. Tell me if you're interested in that in the comments. This is all going to go on YouTube. I'm not going to put it behind some paywall. I'll probably host some template files to make it easier on you from a tech perspective in like a Google Drive that will be shared publicly. And I'm thinking that maybe I will alternate one video with the theoretical and philosophical stuff that I'm interested in, and then one video on the practicalities of the next stage of self-publishing. First an ebook and then a paper book through CreateSpace. Let me know if you find that interesting. Whatever you do, don't drop a bunch of cash until you learn about your self-publishing options. Okay, the next stage of the funnel is the second book. It is the third book. It's continuing your career. This one is easy, but also difficult because it requires time. You made space in your day for writing. Now that you have a finished book, you are spending your writing time by contacting publishers, by self-publishing, by promoting your book endlessly on social media. You need to continue to write during your writing time. If you do that, your second book will happen on its own, and so on. If you wait for your first book to be picked up or for it to become a self-publishing success, of the 1% of writers who finish a book, you will almost certainly be in the 99% of writers who stop there. It takes multiple books to get really good, in the same way that it takes multiple paintings to get good at painting, multiple pots to get good at throwing pottery. So start your next book during your writing time, and I don't know what to say except that you're going to have to find other time to work on the rest. The good news comes in two parts. First of all, I think that you can do the rest, a lot of it, while sitting on the couch during like evening TV time with your laptop or phone. And the other good bit of news is that it doesn't have to be done daily. It's not like writing. It doesn't have to become, it's not essential that it become a habit the same way that writing is. Do it on the days when you have some extra time. Now, the final stage of the funnel is just writing into infinity. So I want you to imagine something. You get handed 2 books and you don't know the authors of either of them. You read both. One of them shows promise, but it's rough. It is a bit hackneyed, but like I said, it shows promise. The second book is good, really good. Maybe it needs a bit of polishing, maybe it doesn't. Then you find something out. You find out that the author of the first book went on to write 3 more books, while the author of the second book that you read, the one that was so good, quit. And you think, that's insane. Like, under what delusion did the first writer like push on for 3 more books while the second was so close to making it and they quit? Like, how sad is that? Well, here's the thing. Both of those books were by the same author. You read that author's first book and that author's fourth book. And after the fourth book, the author felt that they couldn't justify the effort any longer and they gave up on writing. But looking at these people as different people, which you kind of are at different stages, it's crazy that it's the first one who pushed on while it was the second one who quit. If you are pushing yourself, if you are being conscious and honest about your weaknesses, If you are seeing your writing as something that is important and you are stretching and you are trying for big things, you will keep getting better. Almost every time someone quits, it's after they write their best work. Keep that in your head. Let that give you perspective. You know, that first book, maybe it's full of a lifetime of ideas that were just like ready to get out. But the technique, the execution, it's going to keep getting better for decades. We are so lucky to have chosen a medium where you don't have to make a big splash on your first work. You will keep getting better. I can't sugarcoat it. The pursuit of writing is brutal. The industry around it is, I mean, what we're talking about is the funnel that just eliminates almost everyone who tries. It is competitive. It asks everything of you. But I think that it is genuinely sad when that a person quits after they've produced their best work right before they produce their next best work. Keep trying to improve. I think, though, that what's even more rare is look back and recognize at how far you've come. I talked in a previous video about the Miracle Morning, about and the author had a couple of ideas that I appreciated. One that he called gap focus, where we're so focused on where we are and where we want to be. And the thing is that where we want to be just keeps moving. You're never happy with it. I keep telling myself that at some point I am going to be happy with it. And I think that maybe that can be true if the journey is, first of all, you can be happy with writing when writing serves its own purpose, when it is the point. And I think it's important enough that it is the point. And I think that if you get to the point where you can start making some money from your writing and it helps you spend more time writing, that you can eventually be satisfied. But you need to identify, you need to look at how far you've come. That point stands. You need to look and appreciate how far you've come. Keep in mind that this is a marathon. Don't try to force yourself to write 5,000 words a day if that's not your pace. Don't force yourself to write 7 days a week if that doesn't work with your life. Write consistently. Keep taking one step after the other, but make it fit into your life. Make everything around writing as unlikely to get you to quit, to frustrate you, to burn you out. Make it make it the least likely possible. Like, be kind to yourself as a writer. You try to go hardcore, you listen to these hustle bros, and maybe you think that the key is to grind as hard as possible, but this is a different industry, and it spits out the vast majority of people. Another thing is consider what you write as being important, even as you trade that time for other opportunities, which is a fact. But don't let the practical world minimize what you do. What you create with fiction is a lens through which we see the truths of humanity. It genuinely is important if you treat it as being important, if you are trying for important things. That it has to be the writing that matters. It gives you a perspective that we've established only a tiny fraction of the population ever gets to view. When success reaches you, when the world finally gives you some reward for all of your work, take it happily, absolutely. But focusing on it when it's miles and miles off is going to make you trip every step of the way there. You need to have your head down, looking at the next step, and be pushing forward, because it's the next step that's important. More than, this is true of most things in life, but I think with writing, it's essential. You aren't going to get rewards quickly. The rewards are so far off, and that's looking far ahead when there are all sorts of obstacles in front of you. You're going to trip and then you're going to give up. I truly am rooting for all of you. I know that coming from somebody on YouTube that sounds phony, but I absolutely mean it. As a writer, I've been pretty isolated since I took that multi-year break where I thought that maybe I could become a programmer. If I know a lot about giving up and what it takes not to give up, it's because I gave up for a long time and I lost a lot of my community during that time. And because I am a pretty extreme introvert, I don't think that I realized how much I missed interacting with other writers, because I do enjoy just spending time with my own thoughts. But when these videos have been sparking conversations with so many of you, both in the comments and out there on like Facebook or on Twitter, like it made me remember how much I used to really enjoy engaging with like my peers, with the little group of people that I gathered around me who were all struggling forward and who were all helping each other out. And so while I think that the purpose of this channel has changed a little bit, where I really want to try to remove as many impediments through my experience of tripping so many times, where I can like just help you see them before you trip on them, which is why I'm considering making that self-publishing series, because making technical videos is not at all what I had envisioned for this channel. But I think that I can put what I learned into something that will help remove one of the biggest impediments to continuing on as a writer. Even if you're not at the stage of publishing yet, I think that if you see that it can be easy and that you can produce a great product for not a lot of money, that just having that off of your mind, having that not weigh on you, will help see you through to that point. I'm really planning on making a series of videos if there's a positive response to that idea about self-publishing, the technical nitty-gritty of it, providing you guys with some files, and I'm going to put it all here instead of hiding it behind a paywall. Okay, so I got a bit sappy there. And I'm supposed to be a tough horror writer, so please don't tell anybody. That's it for now. I'm J. Allen Riker, reminding you to write, read, and live.